Morning, everybody. This is going to be the last installment of the Oak Hill trial switching. It's going to be part 5 of 5. In this video, I'm going to be doing a lot of talking. Going to be talking about some of the comments that you made, and I'm going to answer some of the questions that were asked in the comments. So if you don't want to hear me talking for 10 or 12 minutes, might want to skip this one. But I find this kind of stuff interesting. I love the comments that people make, and I love doing the research to answer those comments. So let's get into it. So start it out with, this is the picture I mentioned in the last video. Brad McClelland posted this. He took this photo in 1984. Cedar Heights Clay, obviously. It's crossing Route 93. If you notice, Route 93, there's no flashing signals or anything. It's only the spur that crosses it. The B&O main line is on this side of the road. I could have done that on my layout. I could have had the road go all the way down parallel to the railroad, but I thought that might be kind of boring scenically. That's the reason why I did. It would have been better as far as more prototypical. If I decided having a road the entire length of the layout would just be sort of boring. So that's why I curved it off to the side and gave me some more scenic opportunities. What I really want to point out in this photo, though, besides Cedar Heights Clay, this is, one thing, this is a GP9 and still in B&O. Chassis started in 72, so this was 12 years old. Probably never got painted into chassis this late in the game because CSX was starting up pretty soon. But back here, I'll zoom in on it. This is the crane for the scrapyard. So we pan in, zoom in. That's as close as I can zoom. But this is the boom for the crane that they used in the scrapyard. So my crane that I use is pretty prototypical, I think. I thought that was really cool thing that when I noticed that. All right, so I'm going to talk about some of the comments and questions that I got on sections 1 through, parts 1 through 3. Okay, let's get to it. Part 1, I didn't really have any questions, just a whole lot of really nice comments. So thank you, everybody. I really appreciate it. It's always nice to have your work appreciated, and I can't thank you enough for the words of encouragement and everything. I don't consider myself an exceptional modeler, but I'm getting better, and just try to pay attention to details and do the best I can. So anyway, everybody, thank you for the comments. In part 2, I talked about how I had to set the brakes here pretty extensively. Donald asked me, he said, well, do you have to set the brakes on cars on level track? Answer is yes. One thing, what is a level track? I mean, I don't want to be the one that's going to lose my job, cause a big accident because I said, I think that's level enough. Railroad cars will roll very easily. And once they get rolling, they won't stop very easily. So I reached out to a friend of mine, and he said that in a cut of cars, it's minimum to have at least 3 handbrakes set. So if you only had one car, you have to have, obviously it has to be set on that one car. Norfolk Southern and Union Pacific, they have a minimum of 2 handbrakes set if you have a cut of cars. But it really depends on the grade, number of cars, loaded or empty, the weather conditions, things like that. I can't find anywhere a table that says if you have 3 cars, you have to set 1 handbrake, and 8 cars, you have to set 2 handbrakes. There's nothing like that exists because it varies depending on the weather and other conditions, the grade and things like that. That big derailment that they had up in Quebec that killed all those people several years ago when a tank train derailed, that was on a grade. So there's a lot of, I'm not going to get into why that happened. It wasn't all about setting handbrakes, but it really depends on the grade and the weather. So There's a couple of, there's GCOR, which is the General Code of Operating Rules. And basically most of the Class 1s and smaller railroads west of Chicago tend to follow that. They say, Rule 32.1, it gives the procedure on how to, it says set the handbrake, bleed off the air, move the car a little bit with the engine to make sure that the handbrakes are going to hold before you can uncouple it. So there's another thing called NORAC, N-O-R-A-C, which is the Northeast Operating Rules Advisory Committee, and Rule 109, and that says that you have to set handbrakes, but again, it doesn't specify. It sort of leaves it up to you to know how many to set. But if you see a car sitting on a siding at a industry by itself, the handbrake is set 100% of the time. It's never, if there's 3 of them there, maybe only 1 is set. But handbrakes are applied to those cars. Maurice also talked about the highway crossing, the runaround track, and I talked about that at the beginning. Really, I should have had the line running on down through here parallel to the instead of, I'll move the camera to sort of show you what we're talking about here. I'll try to move the camera around so it's not just me talking. All right. And pan down. See, the railroad, Route 93 should have just kept coming this way. And only the spurs crossed the Route 93. I just thought that would be really boring scenically to have a 7-foot long road. So that's why I curved it off. And I like it. I'm glad I did. It does add some operating challenges, though. John, I don't know if it's Mueller or Muller, ran out of donuts, and Double Diamond Railroad asked me about pumpkin donuts. So guys, I really don't need that kind of negativity in my life, so please don't let it happen again. In part 3, Rick asked me the possibility about operating both modules together. Now, I don't have the lights turned on Chillicothe at the moment. Again, like I said, I'll learn how to do that sometimes. So basically what he's saying is coming from the staging yard back here, I have a train that switches both Chillicothe and Oak Hill. I may try it, but you have to remember my usual Chillicothe switching cars is like 6 or 7 cars. Oak Hill, I think I have 6 or 7 cars. I can't have 12 cars in a train. My sidings won't handle it. I will just be jammed the whole thing. So if I do that, I'll set it up in JMRI, and I'll have to see what it does. Again, I'll set all the car counts back to 0, but I'll have to see what it does. It very well could say, first train I try to run could have 6 cars in Chillicothe and nothing in Oak Hill. I don't know what it'll do. I don't know how it will prioritize them. But if nothing else, probably what's going to happen is it's going to say, I've got 4 cars in Chillicothe and 3 or 4 cars in Oak Hill, so not every industry is going to get switched. And that's okay, because every industry didn't get switched every day. And I doubt that this scrapyard shipped a gondola of scrap out every day. It's not that big of a place. Maybe they did, but I doubt it. Brickyard probably got shipped, probably got switched every day. Maybe one day 1 car, another day 3 cars, Cedar Heights probably got switched every day. But other places didn't. So, but I'm going to try it. I'm going to set up a trial like that and see how it works. So finally, let's talk about buffer cars. The FRA sets guidelines for hazardous and flammable materials. So if there's like a tank car with gasoline or something hazardous in it, there always has to be a buffer car. The buffer car is always going to be at least 1 car. It's going to be full, and it's going to be a car with some substance. What I mean is it's not going to be a flat car, an empty flat car. A lot of times you'll see gondolas or covered hoppers, and sometimes it might be filled with sand or something. They're there to protect the crew. Of course, if I'm only have 1 car between me and a tank car full of gasoline, I might want to have more than 1 buffer car, but that is regulated for hazardous flammable materials. Now, as far as loose loads go, because remember I talked quite a bit in part 3 about the gondola full of scrap. So if the train is moving this way, this is no good according to Union Pacific. Because if I hit a cement truck right here, all that scrap is going to come right here because the cab is here. So the crew it's adjacent to the cab. However, if the engine is like this, Union Pacific would say, that's okay. There's really no definition of what a loose load is. I put a car of coal up there. That coal's all loose. If I hit a cement truck, that coal is going to come out. So I don't know why it isn't. We've all seen a million coal trains with no buffer cars on them. So I don't know, because they just consider that the individual piece of coal isn't that big versus a piece of steel that weighs hundreds of pounds. I don't know. Basically, it seems like loose load buffer cars are sort of up to each railroad. Now, my friend that I reached out to, who started as a brakeman, worked his way up to the engineer, and now he's retired. He worked for CSX for quite a while and ended up at a regional railroad. He said basically it's just sort of a common practice not to put loose loads next to the engine, but he doesn't remember any written rules about it. Again, if you're shifting around in the yard like I do in Chillicothe, it's always slow speed, probably not a big deal. You can't get around it. But if you're going down, in my scenario here, if this car in Oak Hill was going to go to the yard in Chillicothe, it has to travel, 40, 50 miles, and the speed limit on that stretch of rail in 1980, because Amtrak was running over it in the late 70s for a short time, the speed limit was probably 60 miles an hour. So they would not have had a loose load adjacent to the cab. So anyhow, I'm going to continue to sort of follow that loose load rule and try to put a buffer car in. But, the actually question came from Donald, and he said he's got a gondola full of plastic pipe. If it's plastic pipe, it's probably fairly big diameter plastic pipe, but whether they would consider that a loose load or not, I don't know. The answer I gave him was if it's not strapped to the car itself, like when you see bulkhead flat cars with the lumber strapped to it, it's considered a loose load. If it's not strapped to the car, it's considered a loose load. So I'm going to continue following those guidelines, but really it's up to you whether you want to follow them or not. It does add a little bit of complexity to switching, which I like. So I hope you found this interesting. Again, I love the questions, love doing the research, but it's like Steve Brown says, it's my railroad. So run it the way you want to run your railroad. But the flip side goes for me. I get to run my railroad the way I want to, and I like doing the research, and I like trying to follow the rules. So please don't be offended or anything if you think that I'm going too far. That kind of stuff interests me. All right, I'm going to go ahead and shut up. Again, like I said, this is part 5 of 5. I'm going to continue working on the Chillicothe. I've got a couple little upgrades I'm doing, and of course continue working on Oak Hill, but I promise in the next video there will be trains running. So everybody stay safe.